Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of the Hero Movie Podcast. I am your host, Adam Portrais, and I am here. This show is interesting because it came about with three guys who love comics, who love movies, and we decided, hey, we're going to turn this into a full-blown superhero podcast. So I have today with me Sean Keenan, a frequent guest on my regular podcast, The Film Find. Hello, sir.
Hi.
And of course, the other man which we had on our podcast, The Film Find at thefilmfind.com. So that's my initial podcast. This is our, I guess we could say, the second podcast in the quote unquote Film Find podcast network. I've started a network yes. Or so as I say.
The empire is building.
Yeah. So, that's nice is you can just basically, make up your own rules and just go, hey, I got a network now. So how about that? But he came on our podcast. We're talking about the Captain America, the Winter Soldier. He is back. Bruce Leslie from the Heroes and Villians podcast. Welcome, sir.
Hey, it's good to be back again, or back for the first time, I suppose, since this is sort of a new thing.
Kind of depends upon how you look at it, really. Let me make sure I got all my levels and stuff here, right? Oh, man. It is, this is going to be, like I said, it's interesting, it's new, it's different for us. Let's start with you, Sean, and kind of tell us who you are and your kind of relationship to comics and movies and everything else like that.
Well, my name is Sean Keenan. I am a Cancer. I love I love comic books. I've loved comic books since I was a kid. I am well versed in comic books, and I can't believe that we're in this era of comic book movies. And it's like every week there's a new one coming out, and I couldn't be happier.
Indeed. And Bruce, what about you, sir?
Well, I'm over at the Heroes and Villains podcast, the podcast I've been doing for about a year and a half now. We take one superhero and kind of dive into it, sometimes a villain, dive into it for like anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. And I mean, we just cover everything you can imagine. And part of what we cover are the multimedia appearances where we get to talk about some of the movies and television shows that they've been in. And that's gotten to be one of my favorite parts of the show. So I think the opportunity to just kind of focus on that aspect of things is pretty exciting. And as far as my connection with comic books and superheroes, my favorite television show when I was as far back as I can remember was Super Friends. And then when I got a little bit more mature, I moved into the Incredible Hulk and Wonder Woman, and I've just stuck in the genre ever since then. So I'm really, really enjoying what's been going on for the past few years here with this renaissance, if you will, for the superhero film.
Bruce, if you were going to pick one episode of your podcast that everyone should listen to as, hey, this is what we do, what would you choose?
Well, that's a tough question. It's like all my children. When people ask me which one do you love most, I say Silas. But besides that, I guess the episode that I would really want people to listen to, it's good quality. It got a lot of positive feedback. It's probably Buffy the Vampire Slayer because it covers sort of a lot of broad topics. We get to talk about television, movies, and comic books quite a bit in that one. Had a great co-host, a young lady named Rachel Pandich, who's actually an indie comic book writer. And that's one of my favorites. It's one of a lot of people's favorites, too.
So
excellent. Seriously, guys, if you haven't listened to Heroes and Villains podcast, check that out. It's heroesandvillains.libsyn.com, correct?
Yep.
Excellent. Well, I am Adam Portrais. I've been hosting the Film Find for maybe, I guess, in earnest, a bit over a year. We've kind of had some on and off times, but more on than off recently, thankfully. I am a huge movie guy and a super huge. I'm a pretty huge comic book geek because really I am a second generation geek. I am. My dad grew up in the boom of the comics industry, in the early '60s and stuff. So, and he has comics going all the way back then, of which I've read a ton as a kid. And there's never been a time where we didn't have nerdy stuff going on in our house. There was never a time where there weren't, comic books and Star Wars and Star Trek. I don't know a world where that doesn't exist. So I count myself very lucky as far as that goes, because I know there's a lot of people that had to go dig and find this stuff for themselves. And sometimes I take for granted how lucky I am to have had that stuff kind of spoon-fed to me as a kid.
How the hell are you married? Listen to you.
That is very true. I mean,
Good God Almighty.
Between that and you look around and it's just like all the posters and comics and records and movies and stuff. It really is. It's amazing that any woman can stand my presence for more than 20 minutes.
Well, actually, Gwen Stacy was in the original comic book. And
you don't understand. So basically, the three of us got together. We did the Captain America: The Winter Soldier podcast on the Film Find. You can find it at filmfind.com. It's going to be that's a lot more salty than this podcast is going to be. We're going to be very PG rated here.
Awesome.
Salty is a great, and that's a Captain America type word too. I think it was a salty,
absolutely,
it's a salty podcast. So be prepared for that. That's an explicit rating on iTunes. This is going to be a clean rating. We're going to try to keep this a little more family friendly, so everybody, we're not going to dumb it down or anything for sure, but we're certainly not going to be dropping them like I normally do. So anyways, we decided, Sean brought up a great thought when we were finished with that show. It's like, that was really fun. Is there any show out there, is there any podcast out there that talks about superhero movies exclusively? I did a little bit of searching and everything, and there were a couple that kind of purported themselves to be that, but really turned out they were kind of just more geek-related type podcasts. None of them
so
really...
they're liars?
They're a bunch of liars. You guys are lying. And so I decided, you know what? Forget that, man. We're going to go and we're going to do that. We're going to be as to my knowledge. So, and that's limited on a lot of things. But as far as my knowledge goes, we are the only podcast out there right now that is going to be doing exclusively superhero movie related material. So every month we're going to come and we're going to give you a brand new release that's out in theaters. Or if there's not one, we're going to be talking about a quote unquote classic comic book movie, be it, all the way from like Superman, maybe something even before that, or, all the way up to, what happened last, month and a half. So
maybe Darkman 2. Maybe we do Darkman 2.
Oh, yes.
It could be anything.
Yes.
Thankfully, there are only 12 months of the year, and we have to kind of prioritize certain things. But so today's podcast, our first ever podcast, we're going to be reviewing. I wish it was Captain America, but that may have been a little bit too glowing. Hopefully, we have some very interesting things to say about today's movie. Today's movie is The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the newest movie out in theaters right now, directed by Mark Webb, written, some would say, to its chagrin, by Kurtzman and Orsi. We'll get to that in a moment, but let's just go ahead and take a listen to the trailer for The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Every day, I wake up knowing that the more people I try to save, the more enemies I will make. And it's just a matter of time before I face those with more power than I can overcome. I'm so sorry, I'm late. I had a traffic thing.
Did your traffic jam have anything to do with being, shot at by machine guns?
Yeah. Oh, no, I was implying that. Peter Parker, Harry Osborn. You're gonna want to see this. Oscorp. Get you under surveillance. Why? Isn't that the question of the day? There's something you're not telling me, Aunt May.
I once told you that secrets have a cost. The truth does too.
My name is Richard Parker. I have discovered what Oscorp was going to use my research for. I have a responsibility to protect the world from what I know they're capable of.
What is all this?
The future.
We literally can change the world. What about Peter?
Not everyone has a happy ending.
This is bigger than you, Peter.
I made a choice. This is my path.
Soon, everyone in the city will know how it feels to live in a world without power, without mercy, without Spider-Man.
right, everybody, that was the trailer for The Amazing Spider-Man 2, directed by Mark Webb, out in theaters this week. Gentlemen, before we get into this proper, let's first talk about Spider-Man real quick, and then we'll jump into our first thoughts about the movie, or the first of the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Sean, we'll go with you first.
Okay. I was pleasantly surprised by the first Amazing Spider-Man, only because I had heard how bad it was, so I just avoided it like the plague. And I still hated, and I still hate to this day, the third Spider-Man in the Raimi movies. And so I went into this one with open eyes, and I didn't have a moment where I was like, oh man, I can't believe Amazing Spider-Man 2 is coming. I can't believe it, because I know what these movies are. They're not as great as some of the Marvel movies have been. But they're the best word I can use to describe them is adequate. They're very adequate movies. I think that the end for the first Spider-Man movie is ridiculous, but and it's really, really poor. So with Amazing Spider-Man 2, I went in not really expecting a whole lot, and I was well rewarded for that.
Bruce, what were your thoughts on the first Amazing Spider-Man film?
Well, I'll be honest. The first one fell flat with me. It just didn't. It didn't seem terrible. I mean, it's not one of those movies that would hold up as an example of like a really bad superhero movie, but it also just didn't stick with me. It was very forgettable. And I only saw it the one time.
That is a good point, man.
I saw it in the theater when it came out opening weekend, and I never bothered to see it again since then. So unlike, I guess, Sean, you said you had sort of low expectations going into this, but for some reason I just felt like this was going to be better. And when I went to see it, I still feel like it's better than the first one. I feel like it's significantly better than the first one, though not everyone agrees with me on that point. But, the first Spider-Man movie, honestly, I'm not lying here. The power was out in my house for 10 days that summer, and it was like 100 degrees, and the movie theater had air conditioning, so it was like a throwback to the old days of we have air conditioning. And
let's go to the Nickelodeon.
And I was probably kind of miserable, not in the best state of mind when I saw it, so maybe I would have enjoyed it under different circumstances. In fact, I probably should go back and watch it again and give it another shot, but I didn't like the first one. I liked the second one.
Well, as far as the first Amazing Spider-Man, I liked it a lot. I wasn't, I wasn't super thrilled with it, but they did a lot more right than wrong, and that's kind of what I liked overall. It had a decent feeling to it. I liked how they corrected what seemed to me to be corrected a lot of things that they kind of got wrong in the Raimi version. First of all, those being, of course, the web shooters. Second of all, is just kind of like how Spidey is a bit more. He's more like he is in the comics. He's very quippy, and that really was lacking in the original Raimi Spider-Man.
One thing I said immediately after seeing the first one was I liked what they did with Spider-Man better, but I just didn't like Garfield as Peter Parker very much in the first one.
Now, see, I actually liked him a bit more than I liked Tobey Maguire as Spider. I like kind of the idea of Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, but overall, it never really felt like he kind of pulled that off to me.
Are we talking Spider-Man or Peter Parker?
Well, either, really.
Okay. That's just wanted to clarify.
Go ahead, Sean.
I was going to say you love the idea. You're not in love with the idea.
Yeah, it works for me to a degree. I mean, I liked how Tobey Maguire was very kind of nerdy and stuff, but it just I don't know. I'm like I like him as an actor, but maybe not in that particular role. But so I went into Amazing Spider-Man 2. It was funny because all of the hype and stuff that I was reading, or really anti-hype, that I've been seeing from a lot of people, really, most people were just like, oh, I'm so bored. I don't want to go to this movie. I am not excited for this thing at all. And I don't want to say that I was stoked beyond all belief or anything, but I kind of was looking forward to it. I thought, if superhero movies are to tell us anything over time, they've shown us that sequels usually outpace their original movies. Spider-Man 2, was one of the best examples of that. As good as the original Spider-Man movie was, the second Raimi Spider-Man still stands as probably one of the best superhero movies, ever put out.
And I think the sort of the best example of that is comparing The Dark Knight to Batman Begins.
Exactly. A lot of times it's nice to have, all these stories show, the origins and whatnot in the first movie. But once you get to the second movie, it's kind of like, hey, this is a good time. All of that kind of busy work is out of the way. Let's get down to business.
Yeah, it's like Short Circuit and Short Circuit 2.
Oh, absolutely. They're always
faults of Johnny Five there.
Yeah,
wasn't Johnny Five in New York, or was that an LA thing? I forget where he was at. That's been a long time since I've seen those flicks.
But one thing I do want to say is kind of the current trend is not to put a number after a sequel. I'm kind of surprised they went with Amazing Spider-Man 2. I think they should have went along the lines of Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and called this The Amazing Spider-Man, when the hell does Rhino show up?
We'll get to that in a moment, but let's start. So let's get into basically our kind of overall thoughts of the movie, and then we'll kind of break down further as to different. There are many. I've scoured the internet. There are a lot of nits to be picked, and we're gonna go over some of those and find out what our thoughts are on it. But let's go, Bruce. Let's start with you. What are your overall thoughts of Spider-Man 2? Did you enjoy it?
Yes, I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it better than the first one, as I said. I am much more comfortable with Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker now than I was the first time around. And, I think he does great as Spider-Man. I was really, really worried going into this that we were going to get some of the villain overkill that we got in Sam Raimi's third film, and thank goodness they don't do that. And I guess we'll get into those particulars when we get into spoiler territory. But overall, I saw this movie twice. I saw it in 3D, and then I saw it in, the regular 2D kind of format. Mm-hmm. And I think it's fine. I think it's a fine movie. I don't have any. I don't have a lot of negative things to say. Of course, I did think it was a little bit uneven, and we'll get to talk about those particulars more in a bit. But overall, it was enjoyable. I'll probably pick it up on DVD or Blu-ray or something one of these days.
Cool, Sean.
I liked it too. I'm not overjoyed with the movie. I have a great deal of problems with it. However, and I've said this from the beginning with the first Spider-Man movie. The first Amazing Spider-Man movie.
Get it right. Jeez.
They cast Andrew Garfield aside. They are casting these movies a lot better. Like how about we make the love interest someone who is what's the word I'm looking for? Attractive.
Yes.
Emma Stone is beautiful, and Snagglepuss from the Raimi movies. Why are you in pathos over this woman?
She's okay.
She is. Kristen
she looks like she has a chip on her shoulder, and I guess that's because she kind of did have a chip on her shoulder. I mean, when you look at some of the behind the scenes stuff that went on with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, but Emma Stone's just adorable all the way around, and they have great chemistry for obvious reasons.
Oh my, so attractive. Although I will tell you that without getting into it, the ending to this movie, I liked it a lot. I was surprised with how much I liked it, actually. And I didn't expect to, because of the track record of these guys making these movies. It was pretty good.
Yeah, we'll get into kind of who made this thing and why in just a little bit. But overall, I enjoyed it. I don't think this is by any stretch a perfect movie or probably one of the better superhero movies that we've had in a long time. That's not even really close to that. The way Marvel Studios has been doing things, they've been really knocking it out of the park right now. And I do want to make that delineation for people who may not be aware of sort of things. There are two different kind of bands out there as far as Marvel movies go right now. We have the Marvel Studios movies, of which we have Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, the Avengers. Those are all Marvel movies, Hulk as well. Those are all Marvel Studio movies, so that means that Marvel as a company kind of has its hand on every piece of that, so they can really mold and shape these things in the way that they want to have them. Now, we won't get in too much to all the kind of crazy rights sort of situation, but right now, as it stands, 20th Century Fox has all the X-Men and Fantastic Four, and Sony has Spider-Man. And so, but while they may be under the Marvel umbrella, and a lot of people see, Marvel right at the big, opening credit sequence and everything, you'll notice the lack of studios right underneath that. So that basically means that the studio itself doesn't have their hands on this. This really isn't. I don't want to say it's not Marvel approved, because I'm sure they have some Marvel people, that can kind of, give a thumbs
Avia
up,
Rod's
thumbs down.
still credited as a producer on it, one of the executive producers.
Yeah, and I got problems with him, but that's almost another podcast altogether, to be quite frank. And we'll actually get to that. That's a little something I want to talk about down the line. So please remind me of Avia Rod down the road here after we kind of get going. But so. Be it not a Marvel Studios film, I think this is done pretty well. I don't understand. There's a lot of dislike for this movie on the internet. I understand why some of the things that people dislike about it. I get that, but I think some of the more negative reviews, honestly, are pinning a lot of the stuff on, kind of how the film wraps up and what Sony's wanting to do as a company, and not on the actual whole movie itself. And
when you look at something too, like a Rotten Tomatoes score or whatever, you got to remember these critics just saw The Winter Soldier a couple weeks ago. So you can't. Nothing's in a vacuum. Everything's in context.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead. I don't want to go so far as to say like spoilers, because let's be honest here. If you know anything about comics or you've seen the first 3 Spider-Man movies, there's not a whole heck of a lot here that's going to surprise you. Am I right?
I think there are a lot of people who don't know that much about Spider-Man other than the Sam Raimi movies. And when faced with a similar situation that we face in the end, it works out differently in the first Sam Raimi movie. So I think that it is fair to call it a spoiler. I think a lot of folks hopefully are comfortable with it. I don't think it takes away from the movie, but there are going to be some people that don't get it.
That is true, because now that you mentioned that, I do remember hearing people in the parking lot after really, kind of scratching their head going, wow, I didn't believe, that would happen. So actually, let's just go ahead. I don't have like an actual spoiler thing. Maybe somebody will make us one, or I'll make one later. But assume right now from this point out that everything we're going to be talking about is spoiler related with The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Again, if you're listening to this, chances are you probably saw it. And if you didn't, you may know already about a lot of this kind of stuff. So let's just jump into spoilers. Let's talk about the number one thing that I think is it's the elephant in the room, as it were, is kind of the ending and the ramp up to everything with not Norman Osborn becoming the Green Goblin, but Harry Osborn becoming the Green Goblin, and then, of course, everything kind of ramping up to what has been announced as a Sinister Six movie eventually. After they're shooting Spider-Man 3.
Yeah. I'm kind of, I have some questions to ask you guys about the Sinister Six whenever you guys want to talk about it, because I'm not sure where I see a standalone movie going with those guys.
I don't know that anyone does. That's the weird part. Go ahead. What are your thoughts?
Well, they made it obvious who some of the Sinister Six are going to be. I think we're going to have Harry there as the Green Goblin. We are going to have the Rhino, obviously, by the scene that I think should have been a mid-credit scene rather than where it was placed. We've also seen the Vulture's wings and Doc Ock's arms. But who are going to be our other two of the Sinister Six? Are they going to bring? Lizard's still in Ravencroft, right? Connors is locked up; he's not dead, so they could bring him back. And then Electro. He already has the powers of Wes Craven's Shocker now, so he could have gone into an electric line, and he's going to come back out in time for the sequel. So I think that's probably who the Six are going to be, but I didn't know I would love to see Craven or see him bring in a new character, but just curious what you guys think. I could see where perhaps Jamie Foxx wouldn't be the easiest one to lock up into a long-term deal, for a couple of extra movies. Curious what you guys think.
Well, I think definitely for like you said, I like Craven. I really enjoyed what they did with Craven in the Ultimate Spider-Man line. I thought that was a very kind of credible way to bring Craven into the 21st century. So he is essentially kind of like a Steve Irwin type, where he has his own reality TV show where he goes out and hunts the most kind of dangerous game in the world, kills it, and brings it back for all this stuff. And he decides, hey, I'm going to go hunt the most elusive game of all, the Spider-Man. So he goes to New York City to go and get Spider-Man and makes it a big kind of giant deal on his reality show. And I think that's that's an origin story that you can tell in 3 seconds.
That's from the Ultimate Comics.
Correct.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, they really don't even need so much of an origin story with him, because it's already clear that this man in the shadows, who we're yet to figure out exactly who he is, has been assigned by Harry to put the Sinister Six together. So we could simply say this is one of the most talented big game hunters, but at the same time, he's really desperate for cash, so he'd be perfect for your team. I mean, it could be just that simple and bring him in.
Yeah,
he
there's
doesn't
so
even have
many
to make it
easy
personal
ways.
with Spider-Man.
Easy ways to go about that, for sure. Sean, who would you like to see? Are you a Mysterio guy?
No, I hate Mysterio.
Oh, do you hate Mysterio? Mysterio could be so great because he is theatrical, man.
But he is theatrical. You're right. But I can't stand dream sequences in movies and TV shows, and I think there'd be a whole lot of that with Mysterio. I also think there'd be a lot of double fakes, which makes me crazy. I think that the lineup is pretty good, the way you guys have it so far. The only difference to me would be somebody like Jackal. Like I'd like to see Jackal. The character who he lives in the sewers, right? He eats rats and things of that nature. I just saved myself from cursing.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you. I think that I think he might be cool if they're not going to lock in Lizard to have a character like that. I think that they need to have. I think you're right with Kraven. They need to have a guy that isn't so tech heavy, because they're going to have no less than 4 guys who will be very tech heavy.
But they're sort of working that Oscorp angle, though, too. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, they really are. I can tell you who I don't want to see is I do not want to see a clone of Peter Parker as one of the Sinister Six.
Heavens no.
And probably it's safe to say Venom's not. I mean, he's already shown that we're not ready for him in the big screen, perhaps. And they're trying to work Venom, though, for a standalone movie, so I don't know what's going to happen.
I don't know. I think one of the big problems in Spider-Man 3 with Venom really comes down to the fact that Sam Raimi went on record many a time saying he was not a fan of Venom. He didn't like Venom. So going in, Venom was already very much at a disadvantage, because that's not something Raimi really wanted to do. The studio kind of gave him you have to do this. Put this guy in here. He's, Spider-Man's, most, arguably his most famous, foe. You got to put him in this movie. And he was like, I don't really want to do it, but you're making me do it, so I got to do it.
And, being the opposite of what we said about Kraven, how simple it is to introduce Kraven, you really have to develop Venom. I mean, he's got to start out as the symbiote that somehow Peter Parker wears for a while, and then you've got to have the Eddie Brock angle. So there's a lot of character development that has to go into Venom. So it might not be a good choice.
My guess is, if they did do a Venom, they would probably have to tackle that in Spider-Man 3. And as is my recollection, they're shooting Spider-Man 3 first, and then they're going to do the Sinister Six movie. And Spider-Man 3 will be Mark Webb's final Spider-Man movie. He says, after this, I'm out. But that's the thing. So there's a lot of nice speculation about this Sinister Six kind of thing. But let's be honest here. It's a long way away from actually happening. So it's going to be at least 2016, 2017 before that even happens. And Drew Goddard's he's doing he's written the script right now. I'm not sure. I can't remember if he's slated to direct or not, but he's at least writing the script. He's the guy who's going to be doing the Daredevil television show that's coming up for Marvel. He's show running that. Okay. And he directed he wrote Cloverfield and Cabin in the Woods, things like that. So he's a talented guy, but it's yet to be seen, and we're a long ways off, so it's a lot of kind of crazy speculation. Let's talk real quick about how we've gotten to this Sinister Six moment, though. And I think this is where a lot of critics and fans are really kind of giving this film the shaft, is in its kind of ramp up at the end. Now, when I got the Amazing Spider-Man on Blu-ray. It was on sale last week at Best Buy for $20, and they gave you $10 worth of movie money. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to go see Spider-Man 2 anyway. Might as well get this.
Yes.
So I watched all the behind-the-scenes stuff, and they said some very interesting things about how, the Raimi films tended to go super quick. And, it's like, okay, he's Spider-Man. All right, he's graduated. Okay, he's in college. All right, he's out in the real world. So they went super fast, and they were like, we want to kind of take Peter and stretch him out, keep him in high school a little while longer. And what's the first thing that we do in this movie? He's graduating high school. Yeah. I really thought that's a giant misstep on their part. I would have loved to see at least one more movie where he was in high school and had to deal with those problems that make Spider-Man Spider-Man.
But Andrew Garfield he doesn't look like a high school kid anymore.
He's 30 years old, but he does not look 30. He looks maybe like, I mean, honest to God, I've seen some kids, he could pass for 19, easy. And Luke, for heaven's sake, Luke Perry was 45 years old in 90210.
That's exactly where I'm going with this, is that, what are you going to have, a 45-year-old Peter Parker? Hey, I'm graduating.
No, just through this movie. Just through this movie, and then shoot a graduation scene at the end of this schedule, and then, join back up, 2 years later while he's in college or something.
Okay.
I think that's a very easy fix that they could have kind of extended this out for a little bit longer. None of us, have a aging stasis or anything, but I think you can pull these people out a little while longer.
They could have even just manipulated the script a little bit, where the final sort of scene that will be shocking to some people that involves the Green Goblin finally confronting Gwen and Spider-Man. That could have been graduation day, and they're actually missing their graduation because of all this. They could have made it so by the end of the movie he's graduated, but at least we get to see kind of the high school Peter Parker for a couple more hours.
And I'll be honest with you, I wish they would have actually, just let Gwen even survive this movie and kill her off in 3. Man, would that, as much impact as it had now, no pun intended, how much more impact would have been had she survived 2 whole movies, 2.5 once you get up to the point where she dies in 3. I think, as well as we've built their relationship in these movies, and this one especially, and I think Mark Webb's the perfect guy to do that because he did such a great job. A great relationship movie they directed was 500 Days of Summer before he did the first Amazing Spider-Man movie. So he develops this relationship really well, and I think even if we gave that even one more movie, it would have stretched out even better. We could have slowed down the reveal of Harry being the Green Goblin, and things could have been just paced a little bit better. That's ultimately where my kind of, problems with it would happen to lie.
The only theory I can come up with is that Mark Webb really wants to have his hands in the pot when Mary Jane gets introduced, and to be able to sort of tell the story of the conflicted Peter Parker with what happened to Gwen, and should he get close to someone again or should he not. I could see where he may really want to tackle that, and if the third movie is definitely his last movie, then he has to make sure that's going to happen.
Well, it's very interesting that you brought that up.
The other elephant in the room here, too, which is that Andrew Garfield isn't coming back for a 4th one.
Yeah, he's kind of been like
they're going to have to decide how they want to tackle that in the next one.
Miles Morales?
And that's exactly where I'm going.
Well, okay, gentlemen, I will stop you right there and tell you that that's not going to happen. How do I know that's not going to happen? Our good old friend, this is what I wanted to talk about, Avi Arad has said, no Miles Morales. This is the biggest mistake this man can possibly make. I understand where he's coming from, but it's one of the worst mistakes ever. Now let's give people a little bit of a backstory here as to who Miles Morales is for those who might not read comics like we do. Who wants that?
I'll give people like the 25-cent version here,
okay,
and just say Marvel's primary universe is called the 616 universe, but like DC and Marvel both have alternative universes, and the Ultimate Universe, which is like 2142 or something. But anyway, the Ultimate Universe was sort of this separate world where creators could tackle all the heroes in a totally different way and do anything they wanted there because it didn't affect the 616. In the Ultimate Universe, Peter Parker died, and a young half Puerto Rican, half African American boy named Miles Morales, who's about 14. He's really young, which they do get to take Spider. Okay, so I'll say 12.
Yeah, he's a little kid.
And if they hurry up and get on that, maybe they can get Will Smith's kid to be Miles Morales. But anyway,
no.
So Miles Morales becomes the new Spider-Man, and he has slightly different powers than Peter Parker, which is interesting. And one of the things that people at Marvel once said was there was no way that the 616 Spider-Man would ever meet the ultimate Miles Morales Spider-Man, and yet we had the Amazing Spider-Man or whatever a couple years back. So that lets me know that no matter what Avi Arad says, in 4 to 5 to 6 years, so what? It's all going to be different. Possibly. He may not even be in the position he's in. He may, who knows what's going to happen in 5 or 6 years, which is what we're talking about before a fourth movie comes around, probably. Very true.
But I think that would be, I think it's a great way to go about, kind of cycling through, and it's comics. So, Peter Parker can die. We have Miles Morales come in, and, we can bring Peter back at any time. It's comic books.
And hey, depending on how they cast Doc Ock, we could always go Superior for the next 3 movies.
Oh my gosh, I don't even want to get into that whole mess.
That'd be awesome.
We're just going to be breaking our noob listeners' heads if we start going into that whole backstory. But
look, why don't we look if we're going in the nerd hole, we should go into the nerd hole. Really, yeah, we can touch on it. Touch on it.
Sure. All right. So let's talk about certain things. I have some notes.
Yeah. Let's talk about some particulars of the movie here. Why we did or didn't like it, what we did and didn't like, because it's fun to talk about what might happen in the fourth movie. But maybe we should talk.
Let's talk about the one that we got.
The second.
Basically, one of the things that like I said before, I really enjoy the fact that Spider-Man is still very quippy. This is the most Spider-Man has ever been. I am absolutely in love with the costume. This is the best Spider-Man costume we've ever had. It's back to its original kind of form and shape and everything. This is the first time it's really looked like nice cloth. It's actually something that he could have made and not a Hollywood prop. The eyes are super big, which I'm a huge fan of. Todd McFarlane Spider-Man is one of my favorite Spider-Mans. Now, I don't want him quite
that
big.
Sense practically, it's going to give him better peripheral vision and things like that than the smaller eyes did.
So I really enjoyed that. And also with that mask, unlike the Raimi films, Mark Webb has the guts to keep Spider-Man's bloody mask on.
Yes.
Oh, that so bothered me with every one of Raimi's Spider-Man films was there was something that would damage the mask so we could see the actor's face and acting. We don't really need that. This movie proved that you can do that and do it well and not have to worry about what's he look like underneath. He looks like the same guy as what he looks like. So just let him go with it, okay?
Something too that Mark Webb has to deal with that Sam Raimi didn't so much is the 3D kind of market, which is where a ton of money's coming from for these movies nowadays. And it's a little bit easier to do some of those effects too if the mask stays on and you can blend your CGI, your stuntman, and your actor together a little more seamlessly that way.
And I'll say this: go ahead, Sean.
I also like the feet. I like the feet of the costume because it's got treads and it's got a soul to it.
Mm-hmm.
It always bugged me that he had no protection on his feet.
It was just like socks.
I always liked that.
But one of the I really enjoyed that kind of stuff. I liked how they very much kind of continued on the fact that Peter is a very smart guy. That's another thing that I thought was very lacking from the Raimi stuff. You had a little bit of it, but not a ton. These movies, the 2 Amazing Spider-Man movies, have really talked about, hey, look, they've shown you. They didn't just tell you, hey, Peter's a smart guy. We see him developing, web shooters in the first one. We see him testing out the different things that are, how he's going to help these web shooters to go against Electro.
But I'll disagree just a little bit there because there's the scene where he's watching a YouTube video to understand how a battery works, and Peter Parker understands how a battery works. He doesn't need to watch this goofy guy on YouTube.
That's for the audience. That's because otherwise they'd be like, I don't understand what he's doing. That's a spell out for the audience. So I don't begrudge them that.
I guess you're right. You're right.
I
should have looked to my left, looked to my right, saw who was watching the movie with me. It would have made more sense.
Yeah. Oh, you normies. Let's see. I think again we're doing the best web slinging that we've ever seen in these movies.
A+
gosh,
on
it's
the
so
action.
good.
Yeah. The sheer joy of him beating up Rhino at the end. Good Lord, just terrific.
What did you guys think of the kind of Spidey bullet time that went on during the Electro fight scenes?
I didn't like it that much. I never have liked that kind of thing. It was good once, and that was The Matrix. And then after that, it just makes me think of The Matrix a little too much. Mm-hmm. Even in the Matrix sequels, so that's not my thing. But I understand it. It is a nice effect. And with 3D, you want to really get your money's worth. You want to make what would be a split second last a little while.
But see, here's the thing for me. Here's the reason why I like that more than probably most is, to me, like the whole use of that kind of Spidey bullet time really is warranted. They kind of earn it. And it's not there just to look flashy and cool and stuff. It really is to illustrate how fast this guy's reflexes are, how he's thinking about everything, and how in just a split second could, it's very much how if they do a Flash movie, how they need to do a lot of Flash stuff. Is kind of the whole world is slow, and it's called, here's what I'm calculating. Here's this point, here's this point, here's this point. I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, and ramp it up to real time. It's like that, boom, and just done. So I think it totally warrants that. I mean, you shouldn't do it all the time, granted, but I think like a big scene like that, it totally earned it for me.
But in the first one, I also like those parts where people would shoot at him and they wouldn't slow it down. They would just show him moving side to side, and you'd see the bullets in the wall behind him. I mean, there was something, I liked about
both totally work, for sure.
The realism to that effect, too. So I guess it's a little bit, maybe you just need to mix it in the right amounts, and it's going to appeal to me a little bit better.
All right. Anything else you guys really dug?
Really dug? Yeah, there's a couple of things. I like how... the Harry Osborn character, they kind of touch on what we've seen before with the Raimi stuff, and they don't get into it too much. I thought that was handled pretty deftly, and I like how the actor, and I'm gonna screw up his name, and we even had that conversation about him earlier, Dane DeHaan. Mm-hmm. He pretty much is the perfect guy to play against Andrew Garfield, because he's a bit off, like Andrew Garfield is, like the shape of his head is off, like Andrew Garfield's head. Like there's something off about their heads, and the casting was really nice for that. The casting just all around.
And just his natural look, the natural look of DeHaan, I honestly believe that he has an incurable disease, just his general build.
Yeah, that kid needs some calcium for sure.
Definitely, if you haven't seen Chronicle, watch Chronicle. He's in that movie. It's a great superhero.
He's the bad guy in Chronicle.
Yeah, he is. He's so good in that movie. That's a great comic book movie that's not a comic book movie, but it is.
It gave us Michael B. Jordan, and now it's given us the Green Goblin, so we've got Johnny Storm and the Green Goblin coming out of it.
That's one of those movies that you're like, an MTV picture, why would I really? No, definitely go check it out. Movie. It's so fun. Yeah, and very well done. And for something that's a found footage thing, really using dynamic camera angles and having a reason to use them, so intelligent. Let's see, just a couple other things. I love how we've continued on with the Gwen relationship. I think I said it before, Mark Webb's kind of dealing with this relationship and everything. It's as good as you'll see in any of these kind of regular romantic movies, but we got Spider-Man in it. Now, he's a little creepy from time to time, going, I've been watching you from the ledge, ooh. That's a little creepy, but it's all in good fun. I think she understands why he's kind of stalking her to a degree. Has she looked in a mirror? She's very attractive.
And I don't know if I've somehow managed to work this into the conversation on the Winter Soldier podcast that we did. I know I've said it to someone before, but I honestly think they should just dye Emma Stone's hair red and bring her back as Mary Jane in the third movie, because she's so good.
I'm all for that. Now, speaking of Mary Jane, I was going to say this earlier, how you guys talk about like the next movie having to deal with Mary Jane. They actually shot a scene with Mary Jane that ended up on the cutting room floor for this. And in judging by you two and myself, I can say we're all for the better, because I've seen the lady that they casted for Mary Jane, and she looks like a farm girl. You gotta I'm sorry, but I don't want my Mary Jane to be like, face it, Tiger, you just hit the pick 3. You won $40. Congratulations. I don't want that.
She's got to be a soap opera actress, right?
You got to win the jackpot, okay? All right? And now I don't know how I didn't see the other woman, so I can't say how well her acting is. But what's the Sports Illustrated chick?
Kate Upton.
Kate Upton. If that chick
gosh.
opened up the door and said hello, I'd be like, I'm gonna Gwen who? I'm sorry, I don't know who we're talking about.
I mean, Emma
she
Stone's
might be a
not
crap
only
actor. I don't know,
but she can act.
Yeah,
I don't
she's
know
a
that
very
Kate
good actor.
Like I said, I don't know. I ain't seen Kate Upton act, so I don't know if she can act. She might not. She probably
she's
just.
in that Cameron Diaz movie that's out right now.
Yeah,
Maybe
the
you
other-
should go check that out and cover it on the Film Find.
I had tickets. I had like preview tickets to go see it, but I didn't. I didn't go see it. Okay,
I'm sure her Queen's accent is really spot on too.
Okay. Speaking of Queens, all right, guys, let's get into some things that you might not have liked about this film.
You know, there's one thing that sticks out to me big time, and this is the one thing I wanted to say more than anything else, and it has to be the inconsistent tone with the film a little bit. I mean, they're clearly influenced by Marvel Studios and maybe even just a touch of Nolan. They want to be a little more real world, a little more serious. It ends on a very dark note that I could see almost Nolan-esque, you could say. But the thing that got me was the development of Max Dillon. I mean, when Jamie Foxx is running around with Max Dillon, I felt like it was a character out of a Schumacher Batman film. I mean, it had a real Edward Nygma, Jim Carrey feel to it before he becomes Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah,
I mean,
I was half expecting.
Nope, kind of cut out there, Sean.
I was half expecting for Jamie Foxx's Max Dillon character, once he becomes Electro, to hop back into the high water pants and the glasses still.
I had no problem with him once he became Dr. Manhattan, like I said a minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making that mistake on purpose. But the Max Dillon character was just a little bit ridiculous. And if you are not a little bit, he's over the top ridiculous. But if you are going to go over the top ridiculous to have a guy who's throwing himself a birthday party, he's pretending that he's talking to Spider-Man, you know, when he's home by himself eating that tiny little cake. You could even have just a throwaway scene almost where he goes, "Hey, Spider-Man, I want to be your partner." And I even made a costume, and have him put on the goofy Electro mask from like the Silver Age comics with the lightning bolts coming out of it.
That's good.
Just to give us, you know, a second of screen time with that mask on him.
Oh my gosh, I don't know how anyone could pull that mask off, but that is Jamie Foxx's character. The whole thing with Electro. That's a lot of people's big problem with this movie is they say he's a bit too goofy, which in some ways I understand. But one of the things that this movie is getting a lot of flack for, which I completely do not see, is they're saying there's no story in this, there's no development. There's no character development. I'm like, it's all character development. And
yeah, it's definitely there. It does happen a little quick, though.
Yeah, but at the same time, people are mad at this guy. They're just like, oh, so people don't like him, and all of a sudden he's just going to become this evil superhero character. Well, you guys didn't say that when, Buddy did it in The Incredibles. Everyone clapped at that and said it was a great job. This is the exact same thing, and I think it's one of those great things that makes a good supervillain is somebody that goes through, he was just a regular, normal kind of guy who just wanted a little bit of respect for what he did. And really, if you look back at it, Spider-Man may have been the guy to trip him into being Electro, really, because he gave him that kind of false sense of, hey, you're doing a great job, buddy, keep it up, that he probably really didn't deserve. But, it was just that one little thing to kind of push him over the edge to go, you know what, I'm somebody, I'm worth it. Maybe I can kind of go beyond this stage of everybody's just kind of crapping on me constantly. And I thought that was really good. So, there was a reason for him to be angry. There was a reason for him to kind of lash out at people and want to get even because he wanted to be noticed. He wanted to be, applauded for the things that he did, and I think that makes for a great superhero backstory. And I'm mad at people who are just going, "It's nothing. It's nothing. He's just a guy."
And the Times Square confrontation, I could see that being done just a little bit differently. I wouldn't have had a problem if Spider-Man really did just straight up double cross him. Say, "Come on, let's go away from these people and talk," and then take him into a rubber blanket that's very insulated and send him off to the cops. And then in Ravencroft is when he really gets to be evil rather than right there because all of a sudden somebody shot at him. He just flips that switch. And also, I don't like the fact that he was defeated by a fire hose because that's how you beat Sandman. That's not how you beat Electro. So that kind of got me too.
Yeah, I was a little confused on some of the methods that they used to kind of disarm these guys.
But I love Spider-Man in the fireman's helmet. That's straight out of the Silver Age comics.
That was pretty damn funny. The other thing too is the eels. He falls into the tank with the ridiculous.
I'm not sure why that would happen.
Might as well have Michelle Pfeiffer being licked by cats again.
My God, so bad.
Awful.
And that's what I kept going back to, is that it really felt very Schumacher-y with the blue neon lights.
And that's the only part of the movie that feels that way too. And I know that they could have done a better job. I think Jamie Foxx is a good enough of an actor that he could have been meek and humble without being over the top. I think he really could have been like the accountant that's kind of quiet and forgotten and played it a little bit better. I mean, I have to blame direction on that. And it almost feels like a too many cooks in the kitchen situation.
My guess is it probably is a lot of that. I mean, like I said before, this is a thing that's not under Marvel's direct purview. So, it very much could be the producer said this. Well, the kids kind of need a little bit more of a cartoony thing. And for heaven's sake, a lot of Electro's kind of score in certain places is very kind of just stupid, silly clown music showing you like, hey, this guy's a dummy. It's kind of sad and a little bit pathetic that you have to kind of go that deep on stuff. But I did like some of the music where it was kind of like his inner thoughts and stuff and very dubsteppy. And like it's where dubstep actually can work because it's all electric.
And to me, with Jamie Foxx, and I might be alone here, but he feels like a blue collar version of someone better. I don't love Jamie Foxx. I never have. I think that he I think he thinks he's amazing.
That's true.
But and that's part of my problem with him. He has a bit of that Lawrence Fishburne quality or a Kevin Spacey quality where, man, I can't believe the job I am doing right now. I am really, really killing this role right here.
That's very true.
I still think he could have done a fine job with a little bit better direction, treat the property a different way. I mean, they did such a good job developing Harry into the Green Goblin. I really felt like that was done so much better than Max Dillon getting to Electro.
But wouldn't it have been better if we really saw that over the full course of a movie?
Yes, it would have.
And another thing that I had a problem with is, like, how does Norman Osborn basically tag team his illness onto his son, just going, hey, by the way, I was your age when this started developing. By the way, it's going to overtake you in about a week and a half.
And I'll just go ahead and, add a little bit here, a little bit from the medical inside, I guess. But retroviral hyperplasia is just like technobabble, only with medical terms. So that kind of bugged me just a little bit too, because it's meaningless. It's like saying, that's a red thing. You're suffering from something big. But yeah, and I don't understand how the spider venom's supposed to help him. That's another continuity issue I have. Like I said, I've only seen the first movie the one time, and maybe I missed something. But at this movie, at the beginning, they're showing them gassing and exterminating all the spiders before Richard Parker runs off. And the spiders aren't around, but the venom still is. But didn't one of the spiders bite Peter in the last movie, which was after Richard had already left the scene? So he should have. I got a little confused there with what spiders exactly did Richard kill before he left. And also when Richard says the human DNA that I injected into those spiders was my own, my mind went to not the best of places on how he went about injecting his DNA into those spiders too.
It's dirty. But no, I agree. I don't understand where a lot of that comes through. I don't know why it needed to be included at all. I think it's just they were kind of like you got the special sauce, the special ingredient inside of you, so don't worry. That's how you turn to be Spider-Man. But anybody else that injects it, it's not going to be anybody else. Which I read somewhere, and I completely agree with this, is that it turns Spider-Man from this could have happened to anybody to it was fated to be Peter Parker.
Yeah, sort of like RoboCop. They tried it again with other cops, and it didn't work out quite so well.
Yes, and so to me that kind of stinks that it does that, because the cool thing with Spider-Man is it's one of those, hey, it could have been any of those kids on the field trip, but it happened to get onto him and bite him, so he was the one that became Spider-Man. And as this story puts it out, no, that kid probably would have just died a weird, hyper mutated death of some sort. I don't know.
And let's be honest, I mean, as many people as there are wandering around Oscorp, Peter wasn't the first person to get stung by one of those spiders, you know?
Yeah, they probably but they would have just died. I don't know. It's a little weak writing.
The whole idea that Harry got fixated on Spider-Man's blood, though, does work well to introduce the antagonism. Since we're not since Norman Osborn's pretty much taken out of the picture, you have to explain why does Harry suddenly hate his best friend. So it did work from that respect.
But
there is another issue too, is that why does Norman Osborn have a Southern accent?
Because he's Chris Cooper, doggone
Because he's Chris Cooper.
He's Academy Award winner Chris Cooper.
Chris Cooper is a fantastic actor, but he's like, Harry, come on over here. I want to tell you is your hand shaking, Harry?
It doesn't make a lot of sense. We have 2 Oscar-winning actors in this, and they both kind of gave meh performances. That's interesting.
Well. We all know Jamie Foxx probably fooled people with Ray. I mean, it just one of those right time, right place kind of situations.
Agreed. Let's see.
And Sally Field's in it too. That's 3.
Oh, that's 3. I forgot Sally Field, who was fantastic in this movie.
In the trailers, where Sally Field says, or when Peter walks up to Sally Field and goes, "I know you're holding back something. I know you have a secret." I wanted her to go, "You're right, I do. I was also in Smokey and the Bandit."
That would have been awesome.
I used to be smoking hot.
What happened? I got old. But no, she was great in this movie. I love having a younger Aunt May. Every time you see, I mean, it's all the way back to the original, Spider-Man Ditko Lee run, where Aunt May's always like 98 years old and on her deathbed. She was on her deathbed in like issue 6, man. She was
right.
She was gone from the get-go. But I liked kind of the Ultimates version where it's like, hey, look, she's a little more sprightly.
You know what?
Go ahead.
Hey, I just thought of who the hero could be in Sinister Six.
All right.
Spider-Man's amazing friend. That's who it is. It's going to be Human Torch, and it's going to be Iceman and the lady who is basically the Human Torch with the stupid mask.
Firestar.
Which brings us to an interesting point. So we're kind of wrap this up. Marvel Studios specifically has had kind of a great history ever since Iron Man of giving us great post-credit codas. And a lot of other films have gone that, and it's really gotten to a big giant thing of darn near everybody stays in the theater for the post-roll credits and stuff. But this one didn't do that in the way that we all thought we might have. Now, I've heard it's different for some theaters than it is in other ones. But why on earth did they just decide to throw in the middle of the credits, X-Men?
Essentially? Yeah.
That makes no sense to me. I was boggled. I'm like,
they totally missed the point. I mean, I think they totally missed the point of why those are even there in the first place. But I also understand they feel this need to try to keep up with the Joneses as far as what's been going on with Marvel Studios, and also to give people the idea that they're part of something bigger, which they really aren't. But I think it was just a waste of my time and everyone else's.
I think it honestly shows everyone else is scared, because you have to remember, 20th Century Fox owns X-Men, Sony owns Spider-Man. These are 2 companies that are not, simpatico on everything. So Sony went to 20th Century Fox or vice versa and said, hey, we want to put some of your stuff in our stuff so we can get people going to, to go like, oh, here's the big thing that we're talking about. And I really, between that and like the Sinister Six and stuff, it all very much screams the, Marvel Studioification, if I can coin a word, of the comic book movies. And I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about this in future episodes. But where everybody, it seems they're just scrambling to catch up to what Marvel's done. And of course, DC's doing the exact same thing. And everyone's trying to skip to the finish line instead of running the entire race like they're supposed to.
Well, that's the problem, is exactly that. Because the thing with Marvel is that there's one dude, everything goes through that one dude, whereas Sony and Fox and even DC, everything's by committee. And, that one dude is a prick, but that one dude gets it done. And that's the difference. That's the big difference between all of this.
Well, and what really gets me is they had the perfect mid-credits scene. That whole Rhino face-off would have just been so awesome if it was popping up unexpectedly in the middle of the credits, rather than where it is. And can we talk just a bit about Rhino before we finish up here?
Sure thing.
We haven't really, like I said, I've seen the movie twice, and the first time that I saw it, I totally didn't recognize Paul Giamatti in the introductory scene, where he's driving the. Yeah, I don't know how I missed it.
You're not the only one. My dad called me up because he saw it like on Friday. He called me up and he was the exact same thing. He didn't even realize it was him until the end.
And then, I went to see it the second time when I knew what was going to happen, and I totally don't know how I didn't recognize him the first time. But the barbed wire tattoo, the bald head, I didn't even look at the face. It's one of those things. I was watching Spider-Man. I thought this was just random throwaway thug, and I knew they would be linked somehow to Rhino because they were Russian, but I didn't really catch it till the end when all of a sudden it makes sense when they actually show the picture, his mugshot on the computer, and then I look and go, whoa, that's Giamatti. And then he shows up as the Rhino. But, man, they really promoted Rhino in the trailers. I mean, they really promoted Rhino in the trailers, and I just created this very sympathetic character in my mind. I just imagine this young boy, maybe he's 16, 17 years old, maybe a little bit younger, who's a first-generation American, born to Russian immigrants. Growing up, his favorite character has always been Rhino. He sees these trailers. He's saved up his quarters that he gets left over from, I don't know, working at the grocery store around the corner. He finally has $20 so he can go see it in 3D and buy some popcorn, and this is what he gets. And he just gets down on his knees and screams, "I hate you! I hate America!" And we've got another enemy now.
Now
Bruce,
here's
is that boy.
No, I was not a first-generation American.
It turns into Paul Harvey.
Yes.
When you had that moment where you were like, and he's saving up his quarters, shining shoes.
No, he works at a grocery store, and he only gets what people drop out of their pocket or something. I don't know. But I just picture this guy.
Complicated backstory. Your guy has a more complicated backstory than
Electro.
Forget Green Goblin and everything. That's the most impossible person of all. The guy whose favorite character is Rhino.
I just picture him. He's got his Rhino T-shirt on. He's got like a prosthetic horn on top of his head. He's like standing. He goes to stand in line 4 hours before the movie starts, and he's the only one there. And he's dressed like Rhino, and he gets in, and this is all the Rhino he gets. Because I'll be honest, the trailers made me expect more Rhino.
Finally, it's my time to shine. Rhino's on screen.
For the past 20 years, I've been watching all these superhero films, and they've all been disappointing. But this one, my time to shine.
And I've got a question for you, Adam. You watch a lot more films than I do in general. And is Giamatti a good actor, or is he like Jamie Foxx, where he fooled us once or twice?
I think given the right material, he can be a fantastic actor. I think he can do what a lot of other great actors of his ilk can do at certain times, which is certainly chew a lot of scenery. But can be fun at watching that. It's like Pacino. Pacino chews scenery like nobody's business, but oftentimes kind of gets to that line where it's just like one more step and I'll be over to where it's ridiculous. But I'm kind of going to ride this line so much that you're going to you love it.
As I know, as far as I can remember, I've only seen him in one other comic book movie, but I absolutely loved what he did there, and this was just a little ridiculous.
What's the other comic book movie he's in?
American Splendor. He plays Harvey.
Yeah. American. Well, comic book movie about comic books, I suppose.
Comic book,
and it's a comic.
Yeah, the comic was an autobiography, and then they made a movie out of the comic.
Yeah, it's kind of all around. I mean, it's this that
an ironic black hole opened. All reality was sucked into it.
No. All right, everybody. I guess that'll kind of wrap it up for our first episode of the Hero Movie Podcast. This show, like I said at the beginning, this is going to be kind of a once-a-month show. But guess what, kids? You're in luck because in the month of May, we have 2 superhero movies debuting in theaters. So in 1.5 weeks' time, however, I'm so horrible with it. What's it, the 23rd or something? Anyways, the Monday right after X-Men Days of Future Past comes out, we're going to get right back on and do this yet again. And then, of course, we'll do a couple of fill-in episodes of some classic superhero movies. I think I want to do like Superman. I got a whole list. We'll talk about it after we're off the air here. But so super exciting. And then, of course, we have Guardians of the Galaxy come August. And so we still have several movies to go this year. And it's going to be a fun time. And so with that and everything, let's go over where anyone else can find you guys' work on the internet this week. Let's go with Bruce.
Well, heroesandvillains.libsyn.com is the place to go. That's where you're going to get everything. It'll have links to anything that I've got going on. A lot of folks keep in touch with me over Twitter, and that's at HV Podcast. And I'm on iTunes, Stitcher, Zune Marketplace, apparently. I found out that people are downloading my show on Zune. Yeah, I've got 68 episodes up right now, and number 69 comes out on Wednesday following this one, and it's going to be Spawn. So that's one that's a little different from some of the other heroes I've covered. People may want to check it out.
I like Spawn up until the issues in the 30s. Sean, what do you got, man?
You can find me at robotjohnson.com or on the Facebook, which I'm always on, under Sean Keenan. And I'm almost never on Twitter, but if you want to find me on Twitter, it's at TurboSweet.
All right, and of course, I am on Twitter at Adam Portrais, as well as at The Film Find, which is the my other podcast, of which you can find at thefilmfind.com. And of course, you can always go to HeroMoviePodcast.com. There you'll find the links to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. Please do that so you can keep up to date with everything that we're going to be doing, the stuff that's going to be coming out. And we got some news coming down the line for the next couple episodes, so we're going to keep that under wraps for right now. But guys, I'm stoked. I think we're going to I think this is going to be a fun podcast to continue on. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good. I was hoping I was going to get a yes. But if you like the show or you have anything you'd like us to read, or your opinions on Spider-Man 2, Amazing Spider-Man 2, please email us, heromoviepodcast@gmail.com. I know there's a lot of detractors out there. If you write us a letter or something, we will most certainly read it on the next episode, because that's something that we definitely want with our listeners, is some feedback and some back and forth with you guys, because you're what's going to make this show happen and be popular and take over the I don't want to say world. Let's go with the state first, and then we'll kind of we'll branch out from there.
City,
state, yes,
country,
tri-state region, omniverse, and then then who knows? We'll get into the 815 and the 1602 and the.
You really brought it, Bruce. You really brought it with knowing what the ultimate universe.
I don't even know what the ultimate number is. That's messed up. All right,
I have to bring those up on occasion on my show.
All right, everybody, that will do it for the inaugural episode of the Hero Movie Podcast. For Sean Keenan, Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.